For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Bill Clancy. I'll tell you up front, I have limited qualification. My qualification is only in protest officers courses and stuff. However, what I have got is I've got 25 years experience in actually running ranking events. Rightio, what we're going to be discussing here today is ranking events. Now, we have a lot of problem within our sport that we're trying to cater for people that want to use it as a workshop with a boating theme. And we've got other people here that are highly competitive. The fact of the matter is if we're going to have racing, we've got to have rules. If we have rules, we've got some way of managing those rules, and we've got some way of managing the events. The principles we discuss here today can be transcribed to the fleets. I'm not telling any fleet, I'm not telling any club what they should or shouldn't do. All we're doing is laying out the principles. Everything I tell you today is either backed up by the racing rules of sailing, the race management manual, sailing instructions. All right, it's not my opinion. Right, yeah. So the event are run in accordance with the racing rules of sailing, 2021, 2024. They will be changed 1st of January 2025. But normally, if you've been through any of these changes, you'll find that it's only the peripheries. It's only trying to tidy up bits and pieces to try and please everyone. There is procedures. If you're not happy with the rule, there are procedures for you to get the rules changed. Good luck with that. Not only have you got to convince the ARYA, but you've got to convince every other organisation in the world, because they're the world rules, they're not our rules. They're the world rules. All right? So there's very difficult to actually get the rules changed. At the moment, they're going through amendments to Appendix E. If you've got anything that you want, send it off to Glenn Dawson. You can get his name off the internet. He's the ARYA secretary, and he will include it. If Australia believes yes, you've got a good point, they'll try and include it. That doesn't mean it'll get through. The race management manual, and you've got a copy of the race management manual there, and we'll go through that later on. Now, the race management manual was put out to the ARYA for guidelines for ranking events. All right, but the information in there can easily be transferred to club events. All right, it just gives you a guidelines. That's what they call guidelines, or race management guidelines for ROs. That was a publication that I put out. All that is, it hasn't changed any of the rules. We've deleted all the appendixes that don't belong to the radio sailing. But what we've also done is, if you flick through it, you'll see some things in red. If it didn't come up in red, you'll find that it'll come up in a different shade. What that is changes required by Appendix E. Appendix E is what we sail to. We've got the racing rules of sailing, which covers everybody. It is amended by Appendix E for radio sailing. What else is it amended by?
Sailing instructions.
The sailing instructions, all right? So the sailing instructions, there are set rules that can't be changed. For instance, definitions can't be changed. All right, there's set rules. I think it's Rule 78 tells you what rules you can change. All right, appendixes can't be changed. What you'll find there is that in this text here, it has actually been amended to Appendix E. So it reads as if it was as you're amending Appendix E. Why that is very convenient at an event or something, if you're on a protest committee and you decide something according to the racing rules of sailing, the first thing I'd do is say, has that been amended by Appendix E? All right, well, this one here you know, because you're reading what it is. The other workbook, the guidelines for the RO, all right, as I said, at the top of each of the things in the guideline for ROs, it will have the references to cover what that topic is. In there is a list of amendments. Also at the back of it, I've put in an attachment which is from the DF's because they have gone through and they have made some amendments to the race management manual for DF sailing specifically. Don't get confused, and some people have been confused before. They think because they're running an event at Paradise, therefore they're to use the Paradise Radio Yacht Club standard sailing instructions. That is for club events, all right? The sailing instructions we use for ranking events comes from the ARYA. Now, what normally happens at the start is the notice of race goes out. We go to the ARYA website, it's got a notice of race generator. It is very simple to operate. All you have to do is you feed in information. It was actually designed by a bloke up at the QRYA. It is very, very efficient. It has one drawback. What you do is you answer all the questions, you know, like what date is it on, is it a ranking event, your venue location, whether lunch is going to be provided. It's just a tick and flick type thing. You go through that, then you send it off, and it comes back all neatly printed up with the information in the right section. It has two drawbacks. One is it comes back in a PDF file, all right? And they've done that on purpose because I chatted to them about this. I said, well, why don't you send it back in muddy words so that we can make, if the committee decides that it wants to make an amendment, it can make an amendment to that. They said, that's why we did that, so they can't. So what you got to do is, if you decide, or the committee decides, no, we're not going to do this, we're going to do this, etc., all right, you just got to redo it. Be careful. Some clubs have thought that because they have done that, that notice of race has been registered. All right, we know that there's got to be in at least 6 weeks prior to the event. All right, that doesn't. That's just you. You have then got to send it off when your committee approves it. It's got to be sent off to the events committee up at QRYA. It's got to go through the QRYA into the thing. All right. So then our notice of race comes up. With the notice of race, a standard sailing instruction automatically comes back. All right. So they send you back 2 documents: the notice of race you've been doing, and the standard sailing instruction. Now, I don't like to tell war stories, but my way of doing this was about 8 weeks before the event. All right, I've got a little electric budget. All right, I work out the budget for the event. I work out the notice of race based on that budget. I do it in time that I can give that to the committee for their approval, because that gives them, that gives me the authority to go and buy stuff and do stuff. As an RO, it is very important that you take the time to read the sailing instruction, because it does change slightly from time to time. It's amended. All right, so make sure you read it. The ARYA ranking policy, which we've got a copy of that in the back of your guidelines, that tells you exactly what is required for a ranking event. And your class rules. The rules are very specific. A notice of race and sailing instruction cannot change a class rule unless it's approved by whoever looks after that class rule. All right, so if you're running an event and you say, well, we're going to allow bigger sails on the mainsail, you know, because, you know, we're going to have light winds and going to allow big, you can't do any of it. You can't amend a class rule. As I said, what we're covering here today, and we'll be discussing primarily, is ranking events. All right, but I do realise that many clubs have people that don't go to ranking events. Extrapolate what you want from this for your club events. We have got on our website guidelines that you can download. It's very similar to the guidelines we got when discussing now, but it has been amended to suit the PRYC sailing instruction. All right, little things like if a bloke's acting as the RO, he'll get average points, his average points for the day. Well, that's not included in the racing rules of sailing. All right. So things that are specific to what we're going to do is included in that handout. So if you're going to be doing club events, just download the one for club events. All right, club events, we normally have scratch, handicap, novel events. All right, novel. We used to do long courses around the island and all this sort of stuff. They're the things you may do. Ranking events, we have regional, state and national. The requirements in the race management manual for things like pre-checks, pre-event checks are contained, and they differ depending on the severity or what it is. Whether it's a regional event, obviously has a lot more requirements than a national event. A lot less checks. In most cases, for most classes, in the regional event, it's just provide your certificate and get your boat weighed. There's a lot more when you get up there. Lasers don't have a ranking event. None of their events are a ranking event. They don't have a ranking system. They didn't want a ranking system. That's their business. Making up, like we got the World Championship coming up, and the people who wanted to go to the World Championship were picked on their rankings. All right, and to get points for nationals, state and regional. You get more points for a national than you do for a state and a regional. The rankings that take into consideration are the latest nationals that were in the ranking period, one state title. Now, that doesn't mean you can only go to one state, but you can go to every state event and pick your best one. The computer will always pick your best one. And 2 regional events will be counted. Each state's allowed to hold up to 5 regional events. Only 2 of them will be counted. All right, your best 2. In the ranking events, if it's a single event, it's been conducted in accordance with Racing Rules of Sailing Appendix A, the scoring. We have 2 fleet management events that have been approved. One is HMS, which I highly recommend, and the other one is a simplified heat racing system. Now, the simplified heat racing system has some advantage, some disadvantages. The biggest advantage of it, or which they advertise, is that you don't have to hear the protest there and then, because your next race you're sailing in is based on the position you finished in. Irrespective, if you get disqualified, you start in the next race on that position. That does get sailing going on a lot quicker. In my periods in the Army, when I did all my instructors' courses, they always taught me you teach the positives, you don't teach the negatives. I'm going to diverse from that. I think it's important to start with that we determine what a race officer is not. Break some of these bloody fallacies of what a race officer is, all right? He's not a referee. He can't blow his whistle and say, 2-6, penalty please. Well done, carry on. Keep sailing, all right? He's not a referee, all right? He's not a judge. He has very limited powers to affect a boat score. All right, he's not the judge. That's our protest committee. What scores can he affect? If you don't start correctly, don't sail the course, don't finish, all right, you can be disqualified without a hearing. All right. In the old rules, the pre-thing, the RO could not even disqualify a bloke if he didn't sail the course. He had to take him to protest, because that would have been affecting his score, and the only people that can affect a boat's score is the protest committee.
The RO listens to the observer.
Yep.
So the observer says you don't sail the course properly. Yep. The RO takes that as fact.
Now what you can do is, normally I try and get confirmation. All right. You saw him didn't sail the course, anyone else didn't see him sail the course, get confirmation. Then you just go up to the scorers and say you recall him as what? NSC, never sailed the course. There's a little bit of contradiction there now, in that a boat can protest him. So if he protests him, he's telling him he hadn't sailed the course. But you don't have to protest. That's one of the times you don't have to protest immediately. All right, you can protest the next leg of the course. You can actually let him know when he's off the course that he hasn't sailed the course. This is one of the rules that we tried to get changed, because in my opinion, if the observer can tell him that he hit the mark, or if the observer can tell him that he hit another boat at the mark, surely he can tell him that he he went under the mark. All right. World opinion was no, that's outside the system. And the world sailing is very, very stringent on outside the system. You can't give outside the system.
When a person has not sailed the course, do you have to inform him, or do you just...
You don't have to, but
It's polite.
It's polite too. Yeah. I've heard a lot of protests. I very rarely think that someone is lying to me, because that's what he saw, that's what they saw. You know, the truth's somewhere in the between. You call in a witness and he'll tell you a different story again. And just a word of advice, if you're sailing and you're going to have a witness, make sure you know what the witness is going to say. We had a case not long back where the bloke was winning hands down. He called in the witness, and the witness shot him down. The witness won the case for the other bloke. All right, so make sure, if you're going to call a witness, make sure you know what he's going to say. I will not take a bloke to protest unless I've got a backup. You know, unless I've got a pretty solid case. The last thing you want to do is go to protest and lose the protest, because you lost all credibility for the rest of the regatta. If I can't get backup, or if there is doubt, the same as I brief all my observers, they only call what they're 100% sure of. If they can't identify all the boats involved, they don't do anything. All right, and skippers will say, oh, no one's calling on the top mark, and there's a buddy melee and they can only identify 2 of the boats. It's not fair to call out 2 of the boats and not nominate the rest of the boats that were involved. Leave it up to the skippers. The primary responsibility for calling that is the skippers. All right? Primary responsibility for doing the penalty is whose? The skipper, the bloke who made the offence. If you believe you made an offence, you get clear of the fleet and you do a penalty. The second line of defence is the other skippers. If another skipper saw it and wants to protest him, it's up to him. In ranking events, you're not the coach. I've heard ROs actually coach everybody on the bloody course, telling them what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. That's actually outside of systems. Yeah? You're not the coach. Maybe at some of your fleet levels, you accept that. But that's up to you at the time. All right? But you're not the coach. You're not the social director. All right? Don't want to get involved in all the things like if they're providing meals and other stuff like that. You're not the social director. And most important, you're not God. The number of people that you'll see, there's no wind. Why is there no wind? Why hasn't the ARYA got us wind? Well, the wind's coming from the wrong direction and you've got to change your course. Huh? Why? You know? The ARYA should have bloody looked after that. You're not God, you've got no say over that. I tell the observers, if they say, I think there was contact there, yeah, don't call it, because you're only thinking. If you say there was definitely contact there, think. Now, if he doesn't call it, but you're happy that there was contact, there's nothing to stop you calling it.
Right. Okay.
If there's 2 boats calling it, and one's way up there saying there was no contact, and there was one right down level with the boat saying there was contact, you have to give more credibility to the bloke that was right down there next to the boat. That's a fact of life. You know, most protests we have, as I said, I don't believe people are lying to me. Jeff will tell me what he believes happened. All right? Mick will tell me what he believes happened. And that's how they saw it. We don't get an instant replay, or we don't have the bunker. That's how they saw it. You get witnesses come in, they will tell you a different story again. When we get up to protest, what you've got to realise too, it's not a 100% system, but they only have to have balance of probability. In other words, it is more likely that that happened than that happened. All right? It doesn't have to be beyond reasonable doubt or behind any doubt or anything like that. Well, if the observer calls contact and they don't do anything, I will not take it unless I have supporting evidence. All right. I've taken it several times, and the bloke will say, he'll bring in 2 witnesses, say, no, there was no contact. So unless you can confirm it, and I tell the observers, don't get offended if you call contact and I don't take it to protest. Because unless I can get support, we're just wasting time. What happens in most protest cases, if there's no witnesses? It gets dismissed. They say, that's his word, that's your word. They can't assume Daniel lies every time he comes in front of me. All right, they've got to take both the cases as, yep, that's what he believes happened, that's what you believe happened, unless something else comes up.
The observers become redundant, really, don't
No, because 9 times out of 10, the people will do the penalty.
The integrity of the observer has to be accepted as the highest as fact. If that observer says vote number contact at the mark, then his word has to be then acknowledged. He's made that call.
And then the Dean comes into the protest committee and he's got 4 witnesses that said there was no contact at the mark.
And the observer's got no witnesses. He comes in and says there was.
Yeah, and they'll have to go with the bloody strength of evidence.
And that's what happens in all protest situations. It boils down to a he said, she said, I said, you said, and without a third party, you can't. The protest falls apart.
No, not necessarily. Like I said, it's a balance of probability.
Does that come back then that the observer must have a witness? Because that's exactly what you're implying now.
Yes.
So his word is not...
It rarely happens. All right. Normally, if the observer calls them, they'll do the penalty.